There you go. Good enough.
I had more.
I'll leave the meeting with you now.
There is no clock. Don't mess up. Don't take forever. I'll hook you with the hook.
Brian, you put the button on that camera.
All right, I'll take it over. Is there a camera I should be looking at?
The laptop's on, like,
Oh, okay. Hey, I'm Eric Preston, sector member since 2019. No, 9. I don't know. 13. Moved to this neighborhood in 13. First of all, before I get started, anybody know what this is? It's a lock for a trailer. It's one of these really heavy duty, expensive $65 locks, and they sold me this when I bought my camper.
It's like it's missing a part.
And it rust. I had it out all winter and I couldn't open it up with the key. So my neighbor got his 20-volt DeWalt angle grinder, and it took about 3 seconds to whip through this thing with this cordless angle grinder. So don't waste your money.
Heard it here.
Slow it down.
It's ever so slightly slows it down.
So who knows what this is?
Model T coil spring.
Yes, it was. And now it's an Aspen tree girdling. Why girdle Aspen? Because long story, so I'll try to keep it short. But oak savanna. Oh yeah, I'll get there. Oak savanna and tallgrass prairie are the most rare ecosystems in southern Wisconsin. They've been taken over by farms, development, and just lack of fire. So we've lost these ecosystems that are really beautiful and important to some people. And what happens is without fire, aspen invades and maples invade and lots of other trees invade. And while they're native, they weren't on the landscape 200 years ago because there was regular fire, either caused by humans or caused by lightning strikes. So I do all this prairie restoration, and we got all these aspen trees, and they take over, and I want to bring the oaks back, and I want to bring the prairie back. So we have to kill the aspens, but aspens are really smart because if you chop them down, they just resprout like crazy. They're a rhizomatous species. They have big clones, and you chop an aspen down, it sends these hormones to the roots that say, sprout like crazy. So you make the problem worse rather than better. So what you can do, though, is you can girdle it, and you take the outer layer of the bark off. And you can't read this. I'm not expecting you to read this. But basically, there's the inner layer, the xylem, and that sends stuff up. And then there's the phloem, which sends stuff down. And if you take off the outer layer, you don't damage the xylem, but you take off the phloem. You fool the tree, you starve the tree, you fool it thinking everything's okay, but it doesn't get nutrients down to the roots, and then it just dies after a year. Yeah, well, you're literally starving it to death. So you have to get the bark off of the aspen tree without damaging the inner part of the aspen tree. Otherwise, it'll send the hormones signals and it will resprout. And there's only this window on time in mid-May to mid-June when the sap is running up the tree that the bark comes off really easily. But it's still not that easy. So what you do is you take some kind of a chisel-like device, you get under the bark, and you strip it off, and you wrap it around. And sometimes you get pretty heavy bark. Once you get into the bark, it's easy, but getting into the bark is hard. So it turns out a leaf spring from a truck or a Model T is like the best tool you can have. So then Chris found me an intact leaf spring. Oops, I got to go slideshow mode here.
What do I make it easy for you?
And then I got to find the page down key, or there we go.
Work, yeah.
So then we took my son helped. My son was a photographer. We took the leaf spring, which has a bolt going through it, which was rusted. So I cut the bolt off in the metal shop, just with an angle grinder, speaking of angle grinders. And then I cut a beveled edge with the chop saw And then I filed it with the little band metal filing thing,
Belt sander.
the belt sander. And then I got this really nice sharp edge you could shave with. And then I had to clean it up because it was greasy and dirty, and then I just painted it. I should have had them powder coated, but next time I do this, I'll powder coat them just for giggles. And this is what it looks like when you're finished girdling an aspen. And it's when the bark's removed, it's real slippery because again, there's all this sap going up the tree in the springtime, just like a maple tree. But with the aspens, the bark just comes right off. And then it'll die in a year or two, and then they fall over, which is a drag, because then you got to cut them up. But this is my son making use of the girdling tool. And so that's the girdling project. This was one that someone gave me, which is really nice because it's kind of beveled on the sides. You really need a lot of leverage, and it really helps to have this thing. So I got for the leaf springs that don't have this kind of bump at the end, or like this one, I need to start welding a little piece and figure out just the right handle, because you need to get some force in there. And sometimes you need to use it as a hammer. You got to whack the bark until you get it in there. So there's still some work to be done on the design. I got 1 minute left. I got a slab from Mike Fisher, donated some slabs. What? Oh yeah, sorry, questions. Yeah.
I'm just curious why, like, if you were to just zip around that tree, chainsaw or handsaw really quick, not get too deep into the.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't that?
Because
You nick the inside layer of the bark.
well, even if you're careful. So yes, that's the first problem. It's really hard to do and not nick the inside layer, but that bark will regrow back together again. So we actually leave like 6 inches to a foot, because otherwise it regrows like an amoeba or something. I don't know what the right analogy is, but yeah.
Like a tree.
Yeah, and if you nick it too deep, then it triggers the resprout response. So fire is bad for, fire doesn't help. Fire will kill the little baby aspen seedlings, but it won't kill an adult tree. It will just tell the adult tree to resprout. And same with I mean, you can use a chainsaw and chemicals, and what people do, that'll set it back. You can use a chainsaw and chemicals, but it still will resprout. So you got to like keep hitting it year after year after year. The girdling thing is, and it's so easy once you do it, and it's fun. It's really fun to just watch this bark strip off of this tree.
I mean, isn't Aspen like the largest or?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so when you see a big group of aspen, it's all one individual. It's all the same genetic material because they just spread underneath, underground.
Aspens are all pulp trees primarily.
Yeah.
They're used for pulp.
Yeah. And so the way they harvest them is they do clear cut them, because then they just resprout and grow right back again in a few years, and they grow fast, of course, and so they make a great pulp tree. Well, I ran out of time.
Oh, you're good.
So, oh, okay. Well, real quick.
The time is the time was like a pre-COVID thing, and then
Okay.
like,
Real quick, I got Mike Fisher donated these walnut slabs to Sector, and so I bought one at a ridiculously cheap price.
that was after I talked to Mike Pop. He was thinking it was too expensive already.
So this is just kind of like the raw stuff when I got it. Shitty iPhone pictures. And then I borrowed the Sector belt sander and took it outside. Chris was like, you could do this outside. I'm like, oh, what a good idea, because there's sawdust everywhere. And so I took it outside, and that's just the belt sanded done. And then I took a orbital sander and worked on it for a while. This is the finished product. I used Rubio on it. The guys at Woodcraft told me I had to use Rubio. The jury's still out for me. It's such a matte finish that I'm not sure I actually love it, and it takes 3 weeks to cure unless you use their accelerator. But it's a really beautiful piece of wood, and it was flat enough that I didn't need to plane it down or router it, flat. It's flat enough. It's not like perfect, but the one side was really nice, and so the belt sander was good enough, and it's just a really beautiful thing. Whoops. So I was gonna be a sector nerd and make legs out of steel for it, but you can buy legs, steel legs on Etsy for so cheap. It's just no sense in welding your own legs unless you're, an artist, and I'm not. So, real quick, you guys heard about the cicada emergence this year. I did a little photography at a friend's place of the whole process. It's kind of like Alien when these things emerge, and there's the final result. So that's it.
Yeah, there's a ton of them at my parents' house, and they're all like not quiet again. Like,
Yeah.
literally got down there and got out of the car, and it's like.
It's such a weird noise too.
Yeah.
It's nothing like I'd ever heard before. So, any questions on that? The table's pretty simple. A sander and Rubio.
Like your goes.
It's still curing, so I haven't used it yet. And the guys told me it's not going to be.
They have a start where you can basically leave it there and watch it change as.
Is that somebody asking a question on Zoom?
Oh, it's not, you're good.
All right. Yeah. So I don't know. The jury is way out on Rubio. Do you use it regularly? Or?
It's a little pricey.
It's very pricey. So I just had this little tabletop, and they sell them in small bottles. So I figured it was worth the experiment. Although I don't know what my plan B is if I don't like it. I don't know if I have to sand it all the way down again, or if I can put something on top of it.
Yeah, that's a question. Probably could record this. It sounds like last.
Kinda, yeah. Which is kind of weird, right? But I guess I got used to it. Also, it's in my basement with LED lights, and so if I get it in a natural light, good light, then maybe it'll look a lot better than it does right now. There's so much color in there and grain. I mean, it's a beautiful piece of wood. So
Yeah, it looked like a pop. Nice. Like,
yeah, it did. So I'm gonna donate this lock to Sector. You can put it. I'll put it in the
locks.
I'll put it in the metal.
Yeah, it's fine.
Bin.
There's actually one right to the left of the kitchen door.
Oh, nice.
Brian, I'm guessing you had stuff box water for the ESP thing.
I do.
Good. I'm gonna go.
Sure.
Get your phone. There's something else.
It's there we go. Woo! All right. Yep, I can go. So, all right. Ready to go.
Don't need to convince me. I almost bought the 4K ones, but they were like brand new out ones when we were doing this. So they were super. So that was the problem because it was like $400 for a regular one, like $1,200 for a 4K. Let's do some. All right, next.
I think everyone can hear me fine. The internets and whatnot. All right. So this is a continuation on my ESP32 project. For those that are new to this, ESP32 is like an Arduino, but it's got Bluetooth and Wi-Fi connectivity to it. And what I've constructed is a system where I made a Raspberry Pi 0W. It has the native Wi-Fi connection, a secondary Wi-Fi connection, that I can just sort of put ESP32s on and talk to this Raspberry Pi, and I can route commands with Mosquito and Node-RED, and then it can relay things to a cloud connection, and then I can also send commands down. And then with things with Node-RED, I can also make cool little dashboarding type stuff. So what I've been doing now is I've hooked it up to this NeoPixel, and it's running this back and forth lighting strip. Yeah. So it's right there. And so you can program. So how this is working right now is there's an ESP32 right here talking to the Raspberry Pi 0, and so is this dashboard, and I can send it commands. So I've programmed ESP32 to take certain JSON packages and then display information based on it. So I have this rainbow pattern, which is kind of out of the box, hello world thing. It's this Larson scanner thing that is, 80s television action sci-fi stuff. Turn it off, and then you also have this nice little color gradient thing. So I can go around this color wheel, and it will send the command down. I can change the key on and stuff. So, and like, if you have some questions about, like, you can see like the commands, like here's some of the commands that are kind of going through. So you can see it's sending an RGB type of command. If I go back to my dashboard and I go back to this mode, hopefully at the bottom, maybe it's not. It's a real simple command. It's right. You just gotta send these commands. Like when I sent the rainbow, it's just literally this. It's just this JSON. So, and like here you can see kind of a fuller set of color patterns. So why am I doing this? Well, the next question is like, okay, you always have this problem of latency, right? So you're talking to a networking thing, and then you have lighting stuff. If I were to rebuild the Larson scanner thing, so there's a little program, it's all driven off of this, that knows how long it is, and will increment LEDs and turn them off and turn them on, etc. So the question is, okay, what's the performance hit if I build that in the cloud and send the commands down? So what I have over here is this cloud Larson scanner. So what I can do is I'm going to put this is in seconds. Well, 1,000 is 1 second. And then I can set the number of pixels. So if I turn this off and I hit start, what should happen is it takes 5 pixels, right? And it's just kind of marching it forward. So you can see it moving. And if you count it off, it's about every time it does it, it's a half second. So what's happening is like every time it moves, I'm sending command down. Previously, when it was moving, it was off this. So the question is, all right, how fast can I make this go before networking problems show up? So if I try to, so you can see me, it gets a little faster, right? Well, it's getting a little faster. Okay, getting faster, but you can start to see it's a little janky, right? It's kind of, it's doing it in chunks. And that's not too bad. Right, I don't know if I can get down to 11. But you can see it's not even close, right? It's like, I get down to a certain point and it just doesn't hit. So, and like I can, select the pixels. So here they'll go out to 109 pixels. So now we'll go up farther. Now once it goes out farther, the next time. There we go. No, guess not. Well, anyhow, the point is it's kind of a question of latency and how does this work and could I use it for other things? Other things like what, you ask? Well, what if I want to drive a motor, right? What if I want to do something similar, but instead of just doing now it's going down farther. What if I want to do something like this, where you have this motor, this is a DC motor and on this wheel, so the motor drives the wheel and also drives the encoder. And how this is supposed to theoretically work is like you turn on the motor and then you count how far it goes with the encoder, right? So you say out with the motor to drive it, and then you read in with the encoder. So the question is, can I, what's the speed of the ESP32 going to the networking? How would I engineer it? Because the thing with the motor driver is you control that with the PWM, right? So you send the command out, and then ideally with the motor controller, it looks kind of something like this, where every time one of these holes opens up, kind of clicks a count, right? And the way you want to do that is with this interrupt pin. The thing about interrupt pins, it kind of shuts off, it commandeers the ESP32 and says, focus on me. So now that I kind of know that, okay, with the NeoPixel, it's hard to say less than a quarter of a second. I can sort of make it constantly work. I think that's kind of be the limitation of doing this motor control. So I'm going to be sort of taking my lessons from this and trying to build something that drives some motors. And the idea is like, then you could send a cloud command that says move 5 inches, 5 feet or something. And then then the encoder would count and then go back to the cloud to this thing and move it along. So it's the latest I've done with that. Yes.
Why do you need to do it from the cloud?
Okay. Well, so you can remotely control it.
I see. So it's like a robot thing like that.
Yes.
That's not why.
Oh, it's awesome.
So one thing that you can do is
Yes, that's about persistent questions. So
right. So there is this Node Red app that allows me to put it on my phone,
Okay.
and I can have the same thing on my phone. And I don't have, and I can be on cellular, right? I don't have to be on this local, right? So I can go through this and I can say,
The internet solves all problems.
well, then the other thing is like, okay, if I want to do something more complicated, if I want to put a camera on there and do some sort of vision thing, I don't necessarily want object recognition all the time being done on the device. I could then take it and route it up to AWS and then run it through service, then that will give me more abilities to do stuff. So I've even gotten to the point of, I don't know if I have an AWS.
Every time you're fast, it's very flat.
Yeah. Here we go.
Every single Wi-Fi password. You could go back.
There's all sorts of credentialing and everything. Yeah. So like, in order to get this to talk to the Amazon world, what you end up doing is
Where is it? Where is that one?
it's all these certificates. So you have to have a certificate, and a key, and then a certificate. And okay, so here you can see, I think this is still up. So here is, so there is in this world, on my little Raspberry Pi, I cancel out enough windows. Right, if you take a look at this is, so there's an MQTT server on my Raspberry Pi, and it's relaying everything up to my AWS. So you can see, like, there's these commands. So I have like some of my ESP32s every minute. This heartbeat command that goes up to the cloud. Like I turn the pattern off. Like here's the Larson scanner stuff. Not only that, let's see if this is still up. It stores all the information into a time series database. So here you go. This is like, here's my NeoPixel, the pattern, framed it. Right. So the big grand idea is you capture all these commands. I could then do a database pull, resequence the timing, and say you rerun these commands in this order back to the database. So that's a larger world plan.
Sense.
Turn this light off.
Where's it? Your audience can't see. There you go. Woo, nice job.
So yeah, so that's where I'm at. I'm up to motors next. Yep.
So with the purple red, that photo chart kind of like, is that how you gather it? Or is it being next?
Yeah. So like, for example, the Cloud Larson scanner thing here. What happens is this little thing corresponds to that button start. So this starts off by saying, okay, start into this loop function. And here's a bunch of JavaScript code that will sort of do stuff. So you can see it's like I'm keeping track of, okay, which direction am I going? What pixel am I on? And okay, there's my base config, and here is inside the loop is where it does some work. And then when it's done, it kind of outputs these two messages. One message goes out to the actual NeoPixel, and then another message goes down here, which is a delay message. So when you're changing this Larson delay scroll button, see if I can find that. It's up here somewhere. Here we go, this guy, right? So here's that button, and it sets it into a variable, which is then visible to this thing. And then that delay gets set somewhere, delay. I set this message delay. When it comes through here, it delays for that time period, and then after it comes out, it kicks out that loop. So that's how I'm building the delay loop logic through these sets of wired together this messaging system. There's a whole, the idea is this is a messaging processing system. So every little action kicks out a message, and then you build logic, and there's a whole series of this palette of delays and triggers, listening to different stuff.
Those all have built-in JavaScript commands.
Yes.
So you can just grab one of those, put it on your.
Yep. Yep.
Okay, so from a non-coder perspective, you can do everything you just did. The iPhone app interface we have put on any.
Yeah. So like, for example, we can do this pretty quick here. So we got all this stuff. Let's add. We'll just add to this. If I wanted to, whoops. Engage here. So we set it up and we say, okay, this is going to be under my NeoPixel Cloud Larson scanner. Call it Chris's gauge.
Oh, not double S. Thank you, Aaron. Better ready.
So if I hit deploy, so now so I'm programming through this web browser. It's now active. There's Chris's gauge. So there it is.
Doesn't do anything.
Yeah, Chris is.
So like this one has gauges, right? So this is CPU, memory, and things like that.
So now the next move would be television.
Yeah. So if we take a look at like the CPU temperature, if we go and find it somewhere, maybe it's in here. I don't know. Actually, no, it's up here. Right. So here's like the CPU load, right? So this thing, this is basically every 10 seconds, it's going off and it's sending this command to basically run this Raspberry Pi Linux command. It pulls out a value and then it sets it out. So what we can do is we can hit this little debug thing, put that out here, and if we deploy that, if I hit this, hopefully it shows up in 10 seconds. There we go, right? So 2.8, right? So now we're looking at that value. This put out a message, which is a string of 2.8. And that's what this gauge, this processor gauge, looks at the value.
If you look forward to motors, that's gonna be a live demo, right? Like a fucking metal box kind of thing.
If it can move, and my goal is just use it as like surveying. It's like it moved 10 feet. I can just drive it, and I can look at through my database or through one of these gauges. Like it moved 10 feet, and I'll hit a reset button. It'll zero out the encoder, and then that's my next goal inside of this universe. Yep.
Yeah, I put it on the network share, so 1 second. On this thing. It's here. Yeah, it's usually on the thing, but I don't see it. It's right here, but oh, there it is. Oh, it's blocked by the stupid UI thing. And it's like share screen. Yeah, they pop up like 5 UI elements. It should be the arrow keys. Yeah, just left and right.
Up here, I'm gonna cheat sheets.
Well, hello, my name is Adrian. I want to share the project of the month, the project of my month. I have a company. We design and make signs. It's me. Yeah. This is my address. This might sound familiar, the place. Well, people are looking for signs in town, and they find me. So one of the clients, Capital Fitness, wanted to make a sign. I present an idea. They liked it. So I present the blueprints to the city for approval. They approved that. So I started to create a prototype here at Sector with a laser. Then I went home. I create the files to cut with the laser. I did a complicated nesting. I found a software that was helping me. I pay my bills. Then I went to my backyard. I started to glue all the acrylic pieces together. Then I covered them with green vinyl to be able to get the perfect color that they wanted. Then I assembled them together. I learned how to weld aluminum in the meantime, and I did a structure. I tried the letters in my garage.
Where'd you find the lights?
Online.
The LED lights.
Uh,
Adrian moved out of the country like 3 years ago, 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And he gets back and he's like, "Did I still have box of lights somewhere?" It's not like a light system.
Yeah. When I moved, I was living 2 years in Argentina, and I gave him the box, and I was able to have my garage empty. But now I'm feeling it again very soon. Then I transport. My son was helping me to do like the quality inspection. And I just 2 days ago, I just
Take it up and drive around.
it's my truck. Yeah, that's how I move things. I took a picture in the day, and I already cooked it together. But I don't have pictures at night yet. But and that's it. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
So how when you nested on that, you designed the letters, did you have to program the print part pieces? Or did you have to manually create each letter?
Well, I manually did all the sides because it was easy just to go on 3D and figure out. So I did that, and then I used Rhinoceros 3D, and there is a like a plugin that you can put. You use Grasshopper, and it's very similar to the what Brian was doing. And you hook all things together. I don't know how to program anything, but it was kind of fun to learn to use that. And then you tell the size of the sheet, and then you put everything together.
Where do you, how do you track all of this? You just have to fit them, when you able to label, once they were spread out on the sheet, you're able to label them.
That's kind of what I was questioning. So
They're all-
all pieces, yeah, like how was it laid out, like,
I label each piece. So each letter has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you engrave the name and then you cut. That was fun, but it took me more time. I'm getting good. And the easy part was because it was straight. The letters didn't have any curves. So it was why I was thinking, oh, this is going to be easy, just straight lines. Usually, if you have curves, you can go with acrylic and you can bend the acrylic, but it's way more time consuming. And I was working, and usually the sign company they use for trim cup, like one side that holds the acrylic and holds the letter. But I don't like how it looks. I think it looks way cleaner with that. There's a lot of extra work, but you shall see that I didn't draw the acrylic and the body, nothing else. So that's why these are different. The other ones, I don't like them. Maybe the client doesn't care, but now I know that I did something that
Are is the base of the letter moved on? So there's a video or if you ever change the wire. So is like the white part of the base, is that also glued to the letter?
Yeah.
So then it basically everything's based.
well,
For service, he's asking.
Yeah, we have to change the light bulb.
for some reason, I create like a system where you count the letter, and then I found silicone, and it grabs very well, and I think okay, I was testing different things, and it was too complicated, the system to put the letter and put all the face for maintenance. I just seal all the letter, put the LEDs, and I put silicone. In the day, if these LEDs are not working, I should go with the laser to the silicone, open it, and close it again. And it's holding very well. I did testing, and I was very happy to find a nice silicone that can hold, and it shouldn't be yellow, but they are all sealed. So, and it is now. I didn't need it. Yeah, I learned a lot how, but the difficult is to make it easy, simple. I was very complicated, and then at the end I figured out that
what font is used? Is that
Their
original?
logo.
yes, I didn't
Because
decide.
like, I'm looking like, why couldn't they use the N as the C's? Those are confusing. And if there was an M in there, that would make perfect sense for having an E on.
Yeah, but it's good because I didn't confuse myself. I imagine it reads better, the N like that, and the C. And they are all square.
Two lines, two T's, two Z's.
Also, something I learned is this was helping me because I was learning how to touch the structure in the rock. So I was tired, and I was like 2 hours thinking, drawing, Then I came here, and I would sit here, and I just say, it's like, I found something like.
You just send it back with a roll of duct tape or what?
I can say, oh, you know, screw on the. It's called, anchor, no penetration anchor. Like, and then I went online, I opened my vision, and so I was able to solve the problem. Just a good way, and these calculations are winning, ChatGPT, and calculate the calculation structure. It took me a while, but now.
And you secured all the appropriate building permits for.
He's got a license, yeah. I get the emails all the, I get the mails all the reminders, so, yeah. They get mail here, so I gotta text Adrian, who's down.
It's like, yeah, Chris has the permits. Just go talk to Chris. Chris has the permit.
Yeah, license, and now I need to make another one. We just need to show it to planters in the field. And then it's taking like 3 months.
But now he wants you to scale it down and reproduce it.
At least 11 people in the city are looking for things like shampoo planters. That's like 50 times. But I'm learning a lot about purpose.
Yeah, the city is crazy. It's a pain in the ass there.
Like,
That's literally right downtown.
John's on the Board of Appeals, so you can, right here, Colin, hey, you need some.
yeah, I finally got approved.
He doesn't do anything with science, so you're good there.
At night, it's very bright. I put that email now because if the city is complaining, it's very bright.
Yeah.
About idea.
Your phone, you can just extremely dial it down.
Yeah.
Oh, we talked about that.
To link to the inspector, so when the inspector goes, we start.
Thank you. Jim's actually got, I don't say this often, Jim actually has an interesting case.
You just broke a chair.
He's salary.
Some of kind of nice things, man.
Hated the house was passed around, so it's great for everyone who's coming in remotely. Swag.
And there might be swag. Alright, so you want to share your screen over?
Yeah.
It's gonna share your. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is, yeah, anyway.
All right, so we're good.
Take it away, Mr. Down.
All right, so I picked up a little vinyl cutter. Although it's a more versatile tool than that it turned out to be. I got it mostly, to be honest, it was cheap and it was locally available. And I got it originally to
Things.
yeah, to cut this. I'll pass it around. Is there a camera we can show that?
You can hold it up in front of the laptop, the black laptop, right?
Is that?
There you go.
Yeah, it's a kind of a rubberized synthetic cork product.
EPDM.
Yeah. So it's cork bonded together with some stuff. I think probably use it for better grip. And folks use it to cut out gaskets. It's about 1.5 millimeters, about a 16th of an inch thick, and you just buy in sheets. And you can use it to cut out rubber gaskets or replacement for cork gaskets. And at Chris Systems, I put up something on Amazon, which was it's not sold a ton, in the high 40, 50, not a lot, anyways. But I wanted to cut it out rather than what he was doing, which was lasering it. And one with the laser is it leaves a burnt, really smelly edge, and still works. I mean, it's still functional for anything, but I thought I could do better. So I got a cheap Cricut cutter, locally used, and that just didn't have enough
almost to cut through 1.5 millimeters of material. This, on the other hand, promised to do that, and it did. It cut through second three. So the difference between them was the Cricut, you'd have to run it like 6 or 7 times around with this little, it's a tiny little drag knife cutter is the way it works, a CNC cutter. And you'd have to go through like 6 or 7 times to cut these out. This will do it in one pass with no problem at all, not even at full setting. I found that out the hard way because I'm convinced that Brother sells these. They retail for a couple $100. I got like $30, but I think they really is just a loss leader for them to sell them little mats. And the mat is just a plastic sheet that you cut on, and if you don't set your settings right for the magnet, you cut the mat. And it's got a tacky adhesive on it, which quickly loses its tack. And the problem with that, of course, is if your thing shifts while you're cutting, because the dragging knife, while it's really sharp, if you're cutting something substantial like rubber cork, if it shifts even a little bit, your cut job is kind of screwed, basically. The fix for it, I found out, is you basically just tape around the edges. That it kind of keeps it from moving. But they make a lot of money, I think, selling the mats. People go, oh, my stuff isn't working anymore. And people do work around, like they'll spray tack adhesive on it. There's workarounds for it, but it's a mixed bag. It's certainly not like an industrial vinyl cut or anything. It's more of a arts and crafts kind of thing for people. But it is versatile, and one of the neat things it has is it also has a built-in scanner in it. And the scanner will pass through your material and take a picture of it. And it's useful for a number of things. The most useful thing I found for it is you can then line up your cut file with an image that's on the material. Doesn't matter for the cork gaskets. Then I started playing with it to do other things. And it's kind of neat for that. You can cut out vinyl sticker material that you could then run through a printer first to print multicolor on, and then cut out a profile around it to make any arbitrary shape you want. So I'm playing around with that after I got bored with cutting out gaskets. And let's see if we can get to another image. So we picked just a random an image because I happen to have it on my computer. And I put a whole bunch of them on a sheet. Now the headache would be if you had to cut these out afterwards, it'd be like all day with the scissors or something. But what you can do is then put a profile around it, which looks like this. And as long as the two are lined up, then you can cut around your printed image. So you take a sheet of vinyl. In this case, it was an 8 by 12 or 10 by 12 sheet. Run it through a laser printer, which interestingly doesn't guarantee a particular print. So even though you tell the margins and things, printers aren't that precise. They shift things around, sometimes dramatically. They even sometimes feed the paper a little bit cockeyed, which to your eye you may not notice, but in practical terms, if you put two sheets together and try to line them up, they don't always line up. And the problem with that, of course, is if you have a cut file that's fairly precise for your things, you do need to do a precision alignment between the printed image on the page and the cut file. And the way you do that with this handy tool is you scan the printed page, and then it'll let you drag the cut file around and then make sure the two line up.
So you can overlay them, so you can see if.
The cutter itself will do that for you. So it'll show you the image, and then you can take your cut file, which is just it's a standard SVG cut file, and you can move it around over the printed image until the two line up good enough. It's not a precision thing, unfortunately. A good printer, a good vinyl cutter will take printed registration marks, which are those. Sometimes you'll see them on a document, right? It'll be little X's in the corners outside of the area that actually is of use. But what that does is allow a secondary process to go, oh, this image is shifted over by this amount, and then it lets you precisely align. This is nothing like that. It's literally your eye dragging around. Well, that looks good enough. So you do need to leave an adequate margin around your things if you care. And if you care real detail, this ain't the tool for you. Because one thing it can't do is handle rotation, which printers with rotation will do. Or if you're taping the thing down on the mat, if you don't have it perfectly oriented left and right, then this will not handle, oh, I need to rotate it by a half a degree or something. It isn't going to do that, which can be a bit problematic. So the key is you just leave plenty of margin around it and then tip it first. So I played with that and did some stickers. I'll run a cut job here now so you can all hear what it looks like. It's pretty fast. And in the end, you don't care because it's going to go. Now, The printer is running the mat through this way for, like to be the Y direction, and the X is a little carrot sliding along. The drag knife is here. I can pop it out and show you. It's just a little recessed blade that it pushes down when it wants to cut. It comes up when it's moving.
How long do the blades last? Like many sheets?
I haven't found the light to make that continues to work just fine. This is a tiny little X-Acto bit, I think, but key is it's on a rotary bearing pivot so that it always will align itself with the direction it's moving relative to the sheet. So it's not perfect. Really expensive ones will actually control the angle of the cutter. Then often they'll have a programmable pressure. And this is just a manual process to set how hard it pushes down. So you do need to set the cutter roughly for the depth of the materials you're cutting and how hard it is to cut. And if you don't and you set it too high or you forget it's too high, it will cheerfully cut through your mat, which I think also includes their mat sales. For your mat basically is like a consumer. The other interesting I found out is if any like dust or lint, or in this case, little particles off that fork get on your mat, pretty much turns into shit. And there are fixes for that. You can wash them. You can spray down additional pack. But in the end, it's the mats are kind of considered a consumable product. Mostly the real pain is, and I'm trying to mess with this, is they have somewhere on here a printed code that's reading with the scanner to know that it's a brother mat. It's one of theirs. And the real trick will be to just start selling mats that are printed with that code to screw them. And because this is just a sheet vinyl. There's nothing special about it. It's got some spray tack on it, and they retail like 20 $30. But so I've already took the liberty of taping it down the sticker material to the mat, and I've scanned it using the internal scanner. So up on the screen, which is probably too small for everyone to see, we can do this afterward. If folks want to come up after the meeting and see a little more detail. What I've done then is lined up the cut file that I imported with the scanned image, and then I kind of just walk around to the four corners and go, hey, it looks good. And then it tells you that it's lined up well enough. Software is nothing to shout about. It's got a touch screen, but the resolution is pretty poor. So the actual alignment that you're doing with it is not the easiest. But once you're happy with it, or it's good enough, you say cut, and then you're gonna hit start. Interestingly, it also has the ability to, it's got a pen you can put in. You can also do drawing with it. It's got a few other things that I've never messed with. Like one is the folks that use the metallic foil art where you're pressing on embossing. Yeah, there's an embossing thing, but it's just I think probably a carbide ball tip that you can go around and draw on metal foil. So crafters use the heck out of these things for all sorts of stuff. I was messed around with it a little bit. It was primarily to get the gaskets, and then the messing around is just playing with stickers. The other thing I got is a couple sheets of t-shirt iron-on material to play with, and that was kind of a fun thing. So I'll pass around that next. So let's see. Oh, first here. These I don't want to come back, so everyone has to take at least one and stick it on your car or somebody else's car if you like. So the t-shirt material is it's designed for dark shirts, which made it more expensive. The cheap stuff is just the way the process works is if you have a light colored shirt, it can act like a sheet of paper, and you can buy clear transfer material they call, which is just a clear coating on a sheet of paper, which you run through either an inkjet or a laser printer. It deposits the image on it. You want it reversed, and then you take the sheet, flip it over, put it on a white t-shirt, and then you iron on, and then the clear plastic comes along with either the ink, the toner goes with it onto the shirt. The shirt acts like a page, so if you go with the color board, you need a light background because the light has to go through the material, and then white is white because it's the white of the shirt. If you have a dark shirt, that doesn't work because if you took an image and ironed it onto a dark colored shirt, while you would get the toner on it, there's no like contrast between light and dark. It's just not black with the black shit. So the solution is more expensive, but it's a white pigmented plastic layer, some kind of or something probably, that you buy. It's attached to a sheet we run through your printer. It prints the image on white now, but it's not a reverse image because you're not going to flip it over and put it on the sheet. You actually have to carefully pull this white rubber, real thin. It's like a real thin vinyl sticker, only it's not. It's something that can melt into fabric, and you have to peel that off and lay it on your shirt with the white side down, the printed image up, and then you're going to iron that on with a piece of siliconized paper between it so it will stick to you. And then you get effectively a white background on a dark shirt, which is also a way you have to do screen printing, right? If you want to screen print some image that's light on a dark shirt, first thing the screen printer is going to do is print a layer thick white. The downside, of course, is it's got to be thick, the height black. So whether you did that with a screen printing job or this process, you still wind up with a rather dense layer of plastic material. And it has all the problems of screen printing. So for my most representative sample of a screen printing job and how they weathered. And this was Cormac wanted a white on black, so it's got to be dense. And you can see after a number of years of wear, the white vinyl, the print cracks on the shirt. And that's just typical where you'll see that in any old shirt. The trick to solving it is you don't make it like Eric's shirt, which has large white areas. Chris is much more tolerant, right? Because there's small white areas. So that will survive long term a lot better than a shirt like this where you have a large one. And screen printers know that, and they don't like doing this process as much for a number of reasons. Where it also doesn't breathe, and so if you have a large white surface, sweaty as shit. Everyone knows they got a shirt like that, right?
Do you want to have this one around too?
Yeah, that's an example of the material. You can play with the material. I pulled off the corner of it. You can see how thin
Try to iron it on.
yeah, it feels like a super thin rubber layer. It's some kind of polymer that melts at about 170 C, so pretty hot. I don't think this would work well with synthetic fabrics, so you probably want to do it on cotton. But it's remarkably easy. So I took fairly large images being passed around and laying that. I thought it'd be a real finicky to lay it on there. It's not bad at all. You just get it laid down. There's no issue with it wrinkling. And with Chris's heat press, which is kind of cool, it only takes about 15 seconds to melt it into the shirt. So
Everything else.
You're actually using it for
Yeah, we did an accident. Yeah, it's terrible. It told Jim Aspen to heat press. It's like,
Yeah,
wow,
you know,
plastic strips.
it opens up some fun possibilities. This stuff, it's kind of pricey material. It's about, I bought an 11 by 17 sheet of it, and it's like winds up being about $2 a sheet. So depending on your image, if you want something big, it's expensive. If you wanted to do, that would probably do 20 or 30 of those little ones. So it wouldn't wind up being too bad for that. So I made an image, and after this presentation, we'll come up and we'll carefully align it in the press, and we're going to put this image on the design. So again, this is just a graphic, and all I did in the program is select around everything, and then grow the selection to make a decent boundary for it. And then you take that and put it into a program that can turn the boundary into a vector, basically. So it's just turning it into a cut cap. So now, and then separating into two files. So you have a graphic file you're going to send to the laser printer, and then you have a vector file that you're going to send to the cutter to cut. And then the scanner allows you to line those two things. Now, interestingly, I discovered in the process of learning this machine, it'll take up to a 24-inch long mat, 2 feet, so 1 foot by 2 foot. But its cut area is slightly less than that. And the real interesting thing was, for some reason, they decided that the scanner can only scan 12 inches. Why? I don't know, it might be a memory, who knows. But I put this image, which was 11 by 17, on the long mat and said, oh, that's a long mat. It knew it had it because it reads the mat. And it said, I can't possibly scan it. And all I needed to scan literally was the first foot. I don't care. When the first foot's lined up, the second foot, nope. The software would not, which, so my fix for that would have been, who knows, I don't know, not a fix for it, it's stupid. The scanner refused to scan my image, which meant I couldn't line it. The fix was I had to tape it on with it hanging over the short mat and then reposition it, flip it around 180, and it was, but that's the beauty of proprietary machines, right? Now, a good process would be, right, you'd have to wouldn't have that limitation. What I learned was, yeah, it's cutting something longer than about 11.5 inches is problematic system. of doing it. But
Couldn't you, like, if you're trying to do an image like that, it's like hanging over like a quarter of an inch, whatever on each side. Couldn't you just do the cut, the outline cut, to just like avoid, like cut up onto the.
yeah, there's no way. What I did was I broke it into two cut files, right? The top half deleted the bottom half, and then the bottom half deleted the top half, and then did the cut twice. And since you're aligning it each time,
But I mean, can't
It
you
works.
just do it so it just skips over that area and then it would just come out and you could just.
You could do
skip
that
it
as well, yeah. The headache is if your material is actually wider than the cut area, then you're still hand cutting.
Yeah.
So there's nothing optimal. But yeah, this is kind of a crafty thing. It's designed for people who, I'm guessing, want to use a small area. I guess one of the really popular things for it is for quilters to cut out patterns for quilting on, right? Because they can take a picture, they can line which quilters care about, right? They can line the pattern up very carefully with what they're cutting. And they can cut out their squares, whatever the hell. And ironically, cutting fabric, I think, would be about the worst thing you could do in terms of the longevity of the mat. Because you think about filling adhesive with lint, and they've got to make a killing off the filtering.
So quilters are just printing it up on the iron-on stuff and then layering it on the fabric?
No, they're actually taking fabric,
Oh,
taking it to the mat, cutting it out, and then sewing. It's
Well, look at that.
And interestingly, you go on the forums, they're all bitching about the limited lifespan of the mats and how they don't hold up. I think they're probably making a killing on selling mats. So that's about all I got for it. Any questions on it? If not, after the presentation, we can go do a setup and do a heat press job for them.
Do you think that it have leather with that?
Yes, it would have to be super thin though. Like I said, that cork material is actually remarkably grabby. So that probably presents as challenging a thing. I don't know that you could cut 1.5 millimeter leather, maybe 1 millimeter if it was a soft. Like if it was a fabric type leather, a hard leather, I'm betting it would make it.
yeah, anything that thin. Apply.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I said. If you had it probably a millimeter or less, thin, really thin, like fabric leather, I bet it could do that.
So you can't, I mean, you mentioned this ways like add tack and stuff. You can't like throw me on call 3 minutes reactivate.
Typically they just wash them off. Yeah, I don't know if they use alcohol or not. They might. People are removing the stuff with like an acetone. And now you're back to basically a sheet of vinyl. And then they're reapplying tack with spray on tack and having good results. The big issue is, I think, is how often do you want to have to do that? And when it starts getting dirty, it just gets progressively worse. And then your cut job fails and pain in the ass.
What are they charging, like $10 a mat or
More
more than that?
Yeah, depending on where you go, it's 20 to 40 bucks. Like the 2-foot mat, they're getting like 40 or which makes me think
It
that
normally only costs like 4 cents a piece.
I don't know, man. It's if you look at it, it's maybe a 0.5 millimeter vinyl sheet with some spray tack on it and some graphics. The only thing really substantial there, I mean, it does have a printed alignment grid, but who cares? And it's got, I just got to figure out what the codes are. And then, yeah, if you printed that onto something and stuck it on a sheet of vinyl, you'd have a cutting mat. Which I haven't gotten to the point where I'm going to do that yet. But if I did, then I'd go with that. Play some mats. It's nuts what they're getting.
So that, I mean, it is using that there as a reference.
I suspect it's got a series of dots on here. And it's just reading those dots. Because it knows when it scans it in that the mat is the wrong size. Interestingly though, it won't just auto set to the mat. It just says, oh, your mat's wrong. Like, because you have to go into the software and tell it what you want to cut. 12 by 12 or 12 by 24. But if you put a 12 by 24 mat in, it doesn't go, oh, I got a new mat, right? It just says wrong mat. Which is, it's also got a code for embedded in these things, so it knows what, which I guess is handy, right? It knows what tools in. So if you put a pen in, it knows it has a pen and a little fingers that it can feel. It knows if it's got a cutter, or I suspect one of the other settings. Embossing. So it'll know what tool it has in, and it will refuse to do a job if it has the wrong tool in it. If it has the wrong mat, it'll refuse to do anything also, but it won't just change the mat.
Are they just proprietary cartridges that you strap in there? Or?
They are, yeah, interestingly, and those they charge up the wazoo for too, so.
Yeah,
I made my own
yeah,
pen tool.
it's got proprietary. From
Yeah, I think they make probably most of their money on the accessories.
Gillette's not making its money on shaving cream.
Yeah, that's exactly. Any other questions? All right. Cool. Thank you, sir. Great. Do I have to unmute here?
Oh, you jerk. I think I can get you to my photo.
Good. Okay, yeah.
Oh, there you go. You're off.
Oh, and there's stickers here for everybody, fresh off the cutter.
What's up with that color there? Was that Chris had some?
Oh, that was some vinyl we
vinyl.
had laying around.
Oh, I just had some vinyl that seemed like it.
Okay, I was just saying.
The color came with like 100 sheets of colored vinyl, so anyways.
I was just
I
comparing.
think the closest thing to sector 1 looking at it is not that.
All right. So I did not try to take a video earlier with the laser welder. It's way easier just to use somebody else in the internet's laser welding video. But we have one of these things in the welding shop. It is it's interesting. It'll blind you instantly forever. It's 1500 watt handheld laser, and Jeff has been using it at his house to take the finish off his car, his restoring car. But in this case, of course, he had this giant plate water jet cut, and then he wanted to weld a piece around this huge plate. And I told him that our welder's not big enough because it's not. And so he went over to 2 welding shops, asked them if they could weld it, and they all said we don't have a big enough welder. Then he came back here and tried to use this welder to weld it, and it did not work well because it doesn't have enough power. And so the one unique thing about lasers is that they can put an astronomical amount of power in a really small spot, more or less instantaneously. So today I set up the laser welder. The wire feeder is so there's a thing called column buckling. Column buckling is when you have a skinny thing, you put a lot of weight on it, eventually it just kicks sideways and buckles. When you try to push aluminum in a wire feeder, like from the wire spool through a motor and then out this really long hose out to the tip of it, it buckles. And so in this case, I tried putting aluminum wire in the welder, and the only aluminum wire we have laying around here is pretty small. So of course it buckles. And so I was able to feed the wire a little teeny bit on this thing. And so I'll pass this around. The thing that you're looking at is this gray track here. And the gray track on here, it actually did surprisingly well for how poorly the wire was feeding. And I'm confident it'll work much better once we figure out larger diameter wire. There's definitely sharp edges and stuff in here. This is playing around with the wire or the welder beforehand, but it's able to weld more or less anything thickness wise because it puts the heat right into where it's welding and it doesn't have to heat up the base material at all. The cool thing with this is if you want to build like a stainless steel countertop, or if you want to build really thin metal like stainless buckles really quickly, because it takes in heat and then it doesn't dissipate very well. So it gets really hot in a smaller area and cool everywhere else. And it sucks all the heat out and then it settles and it pringles like potato chips on you. So this has the ability to weld so fast and so quickly that it really doesn't put a lot of heat to the base material. So to be clear, this will take a whole bunch of dorking around and figuring out how to get it to work well, but it's just interesting that in literally 6 inches of welding, we could put down something that stuck a massive plate to another massive plate with very little effort. If you want to try to break those other 2 off, good luck. Play around with it. I was laughing because it was real hot earlier and Jim was trying to bend it, but then his finger would get too hot, so he had to let go or he could break it.
Self-limiting process.
Yeah, it did ultimately end up succeeding. So I guess anybody got any laser questions, welding questions, cleaning questions? So here's one of the downsides of laser welding is the joints have to be perfectly tight. And it will not bridge a gap. It has to be tight together. So that's one of the issues is that your fitment and your assembly has to be really good.
So you can't weld to weld?
You can't, you could lay beads,
Yeah.
but it won't really, like the geometry doesn't work because this nozzle's got to come in. The nozzle's fat. So you can't like lay an inside, like if I had a plate here, like lay on this edge, then like I can't turn over and then lay on this edge because I can't get the gun in there. So there is the third video down. Is it impossible to laser weld an open gap? Which is of course a Chinese seller. So they're going to tell us how it is possible to laser weld a gap. And it's true if we put a backer on it. So you put a big hunk of copper behind it and weld into the copper. It won't stick to the copper and you can peel it off. So there's some goofball things you can do, but for the most part, regularly welding it is not going to do that.
Goggle wise, you gotta wear goggles
Oh,
for
it's
welding.
fucking
You have to
scary.
wear goggles for the laser. Is it the same thing, or do you gotta like?
Yeah, no, so in there, so they make glasses, like they look like safety glasses that are darker. And then the laser came with one, it's an OD6 or an OD8 plus goggle set, glasses set. And I put that on and it's way too bright, like just visibly the plasma is too bright. It's not the laser frequency, it's cutting all the laser frequency, but the actual plasma arc is really goddamn bright of this thing vaporizing metal. So the thing that I bought separately was, it looks like a really cheap safety shield, and it is, but it's an auto darkening welding screen coupled with the laser, the cut filter for the laser frequency. And that actually makes it comfortable to like look at and use. Jeff was using the safety glasses because it's Jeff, and he was using it for like weeks, and he can still see. So ostensibly they do work, but they are extremely uncomfortable, and I'm
Well,
not.
he says he can still see.
The other
He's not chasing dots around everywhere.
The other problem with this is, and the thing that you don't see here is that when this isn't focused on this area, and when it is focused on this area, the light comes in, right? 500 watts operated to a spot, and then it bounces, and it bounces. And so if I put something behind on the reflection, it'll burn the shit out of whatever's over here. And so it like I was cutting something with this, testing it when I first got it as a cutter. And it'll cut just fine. Like it cuts great, super thin, super tiny cut. Oh, and then it cuts the thing about 1.5 feet down with a spot about this big around, and it has 1,000 watts on a spot this big. So it's like problematic.
From the reflection of it, or just
No,
like
from cutting, it cut through the
Yeah,
thing
it's
all,
not cut,
and then
man.
it cut through everything
I
else.
was always
down.
wondering how the laser cutter doesn't cut through the floor.
Well, the other fiber laser does try to cut through the floor. So yeah, it's
So you gotta think about like where
Yeah,
to put your
just-
hand relative to.
well, you have to contemplate some things. Yeah,
And you're cutting like a
Yeah,
curve thing.
interesting. Yeah, no parabolas or anything.
Well, what about, I mean, if, like, to that point though, does it lose enough energy to bounce off?
No, so the light weld helmets, the US company that sells laser welders, it's an aluminum face shield with the lens inside of it, because they know you're gonna get hit in the face with it. The one that I have is plastic, and so you're gonna see it melt. But yeah, it should be. I was gonna retrofit an aluminum shield on top of it.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess the question is like, if you were, yes, I mean, I've heard stories about stainless welders, like stock tanks, getting sunburned in the back of the neck, right? So I mean, in this case, could you literally shoot yourself with a laser?
You'd be defocused. So I mean, admittedly, this thing's going into a focal plane about this far out, which means it defocuses just as fast. So it's coming in like pencil size, and then it's focusing over 80 millimeters, and then it's defocusing over 80 millimeters back to a pencil, and then back out bigger. So again, like you're losing
Once it gets
concentration
bigger,
really fast. So like in your tank example, no, it would be bouncing way up, but otherwise you could have some
And
interesting
then
effects.
what's with the black kind of oxidation?
So I'm running argon on it, and aluminum always oxidizes like this. It should be, and I'm actually, it's interesting to see because I of course didn't watch any YouTube videos. We watched the setup video, and then we just went and tested it and see. I've done a lot of welding, so it's not a big deal. But it was interesting to see this YouTube video for the first time, like 30 seconds ago, to see that they're also getting a black track. So I think it's just the aluminum oxide. You're burning the oxide off, and it's leaving it behind.
But that brushed off.
Brushed up pretty quick. So, and the irony is, so Jim's like, oh, we gotta get a brush up, clean this. Or Brian actually was back there with me. And I was like, no, if you weren't in here, I would defocus the laser and use the cleaning function and clean it up. Because it'll clean the surface too. So, yeah, so you can weld and then you can flip the lens and you can clean. No.
It actually didn't just wipe off.
Yeah, it was oxide on there. So,
So you think, if you had a decent amount of filler, that you could get a decent.
I'm certain that if the weld
well
pushing,
finished.
if it was pushing, it would be fine. And then you just clean it afterwards. Yeah. So it's interesting. Like I said, I was just trying to see if I get it set up for the meeting or not. I'll be Jones to watch Jeff try to get it to go. He's got a corrugated surface tip collar on the exterior, so that's going to be interesting. But they'll be motivated to get a wire pusher that works. That's the next problem. So, any other questions?
So the issue of the wire pushing is that it's just a gauge wire.
The guy is way too small. Yeah, and the funny thing is, it came with some stainless, and it was huge. And I was looking at it like, holy crap, this is a huge wire. Why would they use huge wire? And now I realize it's because it's only pushing, and just the leading edge is melting. And normally when you weld, you're melting the filler. And so the filler is the electrode. So in order to vaporize the electrode, you have to have a lot of current,
on a big electrode. The laser is melting the leading nose of the filler being fed into the weld. So it's actually taking a slice off of the thing, and so you can proportion the speed to get that slice to be variable. So it actually doesn't, I don't think it cares how big the wire is. Because it's vaporizing and.
You literally just have to go slower.
You just go slower or whatever.
Is that power adjustable if you were welding with anything, or is it just?
Yeah, no, I was only at 300 watts. So the thing was at 1500 watts. So I was welding at 1-inch plate with 300 watts.
But if you said, oh, I want to weld up at 16th or something.
Oh, it'll only penetrate, it's good for 3 millimeter full thickness. So it'll do 1.5 millimeter penetration and 1.5 millimeter penetration. I think maybe 3 millimeter penetration proper rate.
Okay, yeah,
6
so
millimeter.
conceivably you could weld really thin stuff with that, just dial the power down.
Yeah.
And go at 4 bit speed.
But I can't weld more than 6 millimeter thick overall, 1/4 inch, without losing penetration of the metal. The same is true with regular welding, so it's not really any different.
I guess I was thinking more in terms of like, because blow through on thin.
Yeah, they put a copper back around it. So you'll see when they're welding with a laser, they'll usually be holding a piece of copper behind it and then welding, because the light will bounce underneath the channel out.
Oh, okay.
So this is a whole bunch of weird, like this beam's really tiny and it wants to go places, so it's interesting. At any rate, so that's laser welding in a nutshell. The other thing then is we have 2 interns this summer. Abdul was here earlier, Chris was here in the morning, usually Abdul was here in the afternoon. One of the things that I had them working on is creating an inventory system. It's called Snipe It or Snipe IT. I don't know which way it is. It's probably like ECAD or KiCad, either way you want to go. What's cool with the software though is we can then, on your phone, readily create inventory systems. What I'd like to do is, we're not trying to inventory everything. We're just trying to make the bins, like, now the knowledge of the bins accessible.
Yeah, you don't
That's
got
like-
it summer, right?
Yeah, best. I hope to do a job before the end of summer. That's my goal. So at any rate, there's a bunch of bins upstairs. If you don't know, we have shoebox bins, all kinds of stuff. What I'm trying to do is take a picture of the contents of the bin, what the bin looks like, and then eventually where the bin is located. And then what we're going to do is we're going to trade out the bin labels for modern labels. What's cool in the software then is that we can go in here, and this software is written by a bunch of IT nerds. And so I can check this box and go here and I can say I want new labels. And it will make me all my pre-formatted, ready to print on a label printer labels for whatever the hell size I want, for however many per tag or whatever. And then these 2D barcodes or QR codes will take you to the inventory URL. So if you're upstairs, you take a picture of this thing and you want to say, oh, this picture is way inaccurate, there's nothing in this bin. You take a new picture and you can spam it to this URL, and then you'll have an updated image on the inventory of what's actually in the bin. So if you go to get your 0.1 pitch header cables and the box looks something like this, you can say, oh, that sucks, and take a new picture and update it. Obviously, there's labor required to do this. So if anybody is suitably motivated on a really shitty rainy day sometime, I can literally turn you loose with your cell phone. I've got a number of users that are able to add things. So anybody can just log into one of those usernames and then you can add stuff. Got no worry about deleting things on accident or doing bad. It's got very, very granular permissions. So you can super granulate whatever you can or can't do. So if you're parent, there's like no way for you to hurt this thing. And it's pretty neat because you can generate the tags, you can stick tags on there. The system will also do check-in and checkouts, all sorts of other things. We're looking at using this for the tool library. It does not have any payment interface integrated or anything else. This would have been a pain in the ass to set up for the tool library. But it is kind of neat. You can build kits, components, consumables, accessories, licenses, all sorts of stuff. And so conceptually, you can actually build in like the consumable in the bin costs X dollars, and if you want 50 of them, or you want to know the source for those or whatever, or the shop wants to reorder that and refill it, it's actually possible to do those things. So kind of interesting.
Does it work reverse where like you like, I need this type of wire or whatever, and then it'll show you like a map where it is, or does it just give you a QR code and say, go find that?
No, so the idea then is you can put in locations. And the locations can be very granular. And so our building is already labeled by these beams. So each column has a letter and a number. And so they're not visible anymore because they're chalked in. But the building is already codified by a grid. And so the idea would be that, yeah, what we'd end up doing then is like use the grid that's existing in the building, and then within that you can delineate a shelf or a
shelf set. So you can say like, oh, this is shelf A, which is at 1E. So you go to 1E and then look for A. Oh, there's A, and then find the bin on that shelf.
And just transfer it.
No, it beams and layers.
What's that?
Well, I mean, it's codified on the first one, but you're.
Oh, you can see it in the trusses. So we just labeled the truss.
Yeah.
Questions here?
So are you having them label them, or are you looking at the pictures and doing them?
So what we were gonna do, and I think the process makes sense, so there's actually multiple tags over here, I don't know if you guys probably can't read it. But there's deployed, ready to deploy, pending, undeployable, I don't know what the hell, BYOD, bring your own device. Requestable, due for audit, due for check-in. So right here I have pending, because I made one of these as an example, so pending deployment, right now we have a bucket of paint. So I was just gonna sit down while the bucket of paint was sitting there. So the idea would be that you go upstairs willy-nilly, take a picture of the bin, push it to this inventory system and put a post-it note or a piece of tape on it or something that indicates that somebody at some point took a picture of this, it's already in the inventory. And then when I print labels, I can go back up. I already know where all this stuff is. You can take a picture of literally any random thing up there and I can tell you where it is, because that's crazy. So
you know where everything is.
to make it so you guys can find things. So if somebody helps me and goes up, takes pictures, I can then generate codes that I can go stick them in place. That's fine. It's also pretty easy because you see the front of whatever it is that you're picturing.
Wouldn't it be the first step in this though, in terms of truly making this successful for the location, I mean, marking the grid line on the truss first thing, so that when somebody is snapping the shot, they could, geolocate it.
Sounds like Sean's volunteering to label all the shelves upstairs. I love that attitude.
What I like about what you just described though is that it's 20-foot grid, not a
Yes.
6-foot grid. So by labeling the trusses, because the truss, I mean, it's easy to find trusses.
Yeah.
So if I can look out and say, well, that's the truss, and then it's whatever. And then, but I mean, the point is that that was the initially all of the data is entered into that, and then like, whoever's entering that, random safe deposit box, and then.
Yes. So I made a basis that I could demo this.
I see that. I see
It
that.
is up to others to help me, as I need more people with more phones to do things faster. But yes, the next step would be to go out and label the shelves.
Yeah.
And then within the shelves, then put contents and then put the locations on here and work our way through that.
As part of this, are you looking at organizing the shelves a bit, or?
So at the moment, to Sean's point, you can shift all this stuff. So right now, these are all the bins, and the bins walls aren't gonna move.
So they're where they're gonna be.
So they're where they're gonna be, and if we ever move them, you just go in here and change location. And you just say, oh, it got moved to 1X, so.
Yeah, that'd be like.
And you shift the whole shelf. So no, I don't think the shelves are gonna change that have bins on them. The other shelves are actually.
The ask Chris step.
But the idea is that yep, there's a bin of rocker switches. So this is what the rocker switch bin looks like, and at least if you know what you're looking for, it's also a lot easier. So that also helps because the safety deposit boxes are only in one spot. So if you're looking for a safety deposit box, there's one place to go. If you're looking for a shoebox bin, there's 4 rows to look in, which at least it all narrows it down. And at least you know of its existence, because you wouldn't otherwise know to go up there and look for, oh, there's a rocker switch bin somewhere. But at least on here, you can also search obviously by name and look for it. So, and then these are types. So within these assets, there are categories. So like the safety deposit box category, then these are all the safety deposit boxes that are up there, or shoe boxes for the big road maintenance. So, at any rate, Rome's not built in a day, so I don't expect this to get popular anytime soon. But the point is, it does exist. It seems to be an interesting system. It's open source, it's extensible, it's hosted on our own website. It seems to be pretty snappy, all things considered, so it's not too bad. We can also self-host it, of course, you can clone it, you can do whatever you want with it, so.
So I know, speaking of doing whatever you want, but I noticed you didn't have a category for eBay.
There's no eBay category, that's right.
You guys know
eBay's
your
its own beast. You know, if your name is Jim and you log in, it's just gonna charge you. Alright, that was all I had, so anybody got any questions?
I really thought you were gonna use the lasers to pivot into the Jewish space lasers that I saw.
Oh, that's right, Aaron wanted me to share this picture, hang on.
You gonna get up here and do a proper talk about your space laser?
You know more about it than I do. You had to explain it to me that it wasn't aliens.
I think it's a South African space.
Aaron thought he was seeing the second coming, or was Santa coming
3:30
early?
in the morning, I was coming home, it was like a Sunday morning, and I looked up and I saw just like a Morse code of like fireballs, just like slowly traveling across the sky. I made sure I was sober, and but then I went running in my backyard to try and I was gonna try and get a video of it, and I accidentally took a picture of it as I was swapping over the video.
He was
And by the
totally
time I went to the video, it was already out of like focal range, but the way that it was adjusted, like it was, I mean, at 3:30, that's almost dawn, that's about an hour away from dawn.
Yeah,
Well,
So-
typically, yeah, that's, I mean,
it is the
dusk
peak
to
on
dawn.
Starlink.
And I saw a trail of them it was just after sunset. And it was everybody was startled. I walked outside, lined up down the driveway and like, holy fuck. And by the time you start staring at it it's not.
Yeah, it takes a few seconds to register, like, holy shit.
But you're literally, I think, in the reflective pass for, it might have been 15, 20 seconds at most.
That was
Not very-
probably been right, yeah, like, it was less than 30 seconds for sure, but like, I just saw, like, it looked like a slow moving comet. Like in Morse code form, like I was like, oh my god, we're in the Matrix, like. Yeah, when you see it, the thoughts that pop through, you can't really control that impulsiveness, but it was cool to see. I've never seen videos of people like doing the Starlink, capturing everything. I always figured they're doing that with like a camera hooked up to a telescope, or, I mean, if you're seeing them with, with the naked eye, I always figured it'd be like out in like Joshua Tree or out in the desert where you don't have light pollution. But it looked like it was hovering right over the airport. Like it was super low and super slow and just like enough that I was. Took me back to my acid days, put it that way.
So
it was really cool, like just.
So the thing to understand is what happens is, as far as I know, they shoot the rocket up, and then what they're doing is they're spinning the body to deploy the satellites. So rather than like having an arm to throw these
They
things,
just have like an extension spring in the bottom of the rocket, and like it just waits till it's like. It's just.
that's the trouble, is doing stuff like that is very hard in space. So they actually
It's hard to
rotate.
do anywhere.
They rotate the rocket body, and then they fire the pins, their explosive holes, and it releases all the payload, and they spin out, so they spread. And then what they're doing now is
So is there any type of burst inside the rocket that pushes them out, or is
no,
it just
that's what I mean. Just the body is spinning.
Just the centrifugal force of that? Okay.
And so it spins them out, and then what happens then is they get distributed, so they don't run into each other. So if they bump into each other, they're fucked. Those two get destroyed. And then what they're done is they're deployed to very low Earth orbit. So occasionally they got hit by, I think it was solar pressure. So when there was a big solar storm, it pushed pressure, like ionizing pressure, into the Earth's atmosphere. And I think when they launched, they got screwed because they had this higher pressure than they were expecting. So all the satellites got pushed in and burned up. And that's expected. They're deployed to low Earth orbit on purpose. So if anything goes bad, they don't boot up, they don't turn on, they
When
glide.
you say low Earth orbit, because like that looked like that was like, I mean, I live right
It's
by
a
the airport.
long way up.
It looked like I've definitely seen planes further away than that. Like
No, this is
it
way up.
Okay, so it was.
So it's a way long ways up as far as planes are concerned, but it's not very high compared to like geosynchronous satellites that are way the hell up. So the idea is that these are intentionally going to fall out of orbit. Even when they're operating, they're still falling out of orbit on purpose.
Is it that, there's also latency?
Well, and that's to slow latency,
Yeah.
and it's to make sure that they don't clutter the because there's a shitload of these.
There's
There's
over
thousands.
4,600.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
They're going
Or
to
it's
more
still
than that.
de-orbit gradually, something like.
Yeah, they just keep falling out. So the deal here is then what Aaron's seeing and what you're seeing when they're going up is they're boosting into orbit. So they deploy this thing low on purpose, and then if they fall out fast because if they don't power up, they want to fall. And they're building thousands of these, which is unheard of for satellites, so they don't care if they fail; they're cheap. So this thing then goes to an incorrect orientation and then boosts. So this you're seeing them when they're running an ion thruster and they're boosting higher to raise their orbit because they're working. So they want to push them up now to preserve them in where they can put them into the constellation to make it worthwhile. The trouble is then in order to do that, they have to get the rocket to be aerodynamic, or the satellite to be aerodynamic. So if you have the satellite and it's driving through the atmosphere like a bus, it'll fall out because the thruster doesn't have enough thrust. So they orient it so that it reflects light back down. Because they're boosting the orbit, they don't have control over the attitude. Because if they try to like make it fatter and less reflective, it falls out of orbit because it's got too much air resistance. So anyway, they're boosting it up, and that's why you can see it reflect, because it's not at the ideal orientation. They later on then, when they're deployed, they rotate them so that you don't get reflections in the ground.
Yeah, cause I thought that was weird too, like being so close to an airport too, where like the fact that I was like literally seeing it, but being at that type of
way up, yeah.
time in the morning, just perfect timing to actually see it. Yeah, I've
So
never
you'll
seen
see
it.
these for a glimmer while they're boosting, and that's also why they're in the chain, because they got pulling out, and then they're getting distributed, and then they're working their way up. So.
Like iridium satellites, I think really they have a bunch of like, sharp edges on them. So if you're out at like the exact right time, see if they really right, so they would catch the sun.
And that's where I kind of think I felt like the ants under the magnifying glass. Because, like they literally looked like they were all burning on fire. Like I thought that it was like Starlink coming in, like a crash from orbit. Because I mean I've seen that the only cooler thing I've seen in the sky was meteors. Like looking up at the right sky at the right time when it just boom. That was the coolest. That's number 2 on my list. But actually, I have photographic evidence of both 1 and 2. So, because the meteor that I saw explode years ago, I went and saw that it made the news the next morning because the UW Science Building.
Yeah, Science Center has. Yep.
So, Chris, you're saying when it spirals out and deploys that initial,
It's called a train. Yeah.
So this train, but then you said that's still in that Earth's atmosphere.
It's it's low enough that you're getting resistance. It's not. These are all like, by our perspective, these are all in space.
Okay,
But
so
through space is like way out.
But these hadn't reached orbit.
You said not reached the orbit.
But the question is, if it's low enough, you said that when if it was to fail and like not booster kick on, it would actually still burn up.
Yep, they fall down and burn up.
So it's still high enough that it's going to hit that layer.
It's already hitting atmospheric
like-
drag. That's why they're so worried about boosting them up, because they fall out. And it's also so close that that increase in solar pressure was enough to push a whole load of them up.
Is
So they're
that
like
using like
right
the
at that
centripetal force of like the Earth's gravity to slowly get it up higher as it's going up? Or
It's
how
just
is
using
that?
an ion burner. It's just got a
Oh,
thruster. It's just that that thruster is, again, they're trying to minimize the cost. So that thruster is the barest minimum to get it to orbit.
it's got a couple CO2 packs in there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it might as well be. It's like they're building these things in an assembly line fashion, and they're trying to shoot for like thousands of dollars per satellite, which is again is all unheard of.
But like when they deploy them, it has to be like high enough that we're not just gonna fall back with the rocket.
Yep.
But have to be like,
Yeah, so
how much do they weigh? Like each of
they're in the order of tons. They're heavy.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
shit.
pretty sure. I don't think they're hundreds of pounds. I think they're thousands of pounds. But I could be
Which
completely.
might when we need them, right?
He really should be at this.
So I thought I saw the Jewish space lasers or aliens.
Ooh, I'm way
And
wrong.
I sent it to Chris immediately.
260 kilograms.
So you're fighting the outclean laser.
So they're 500 pounds a piece ish.
Holy crap.
So they're
And each one has, and I think.
Like I said, when I was looking at it, it looked like it was just hovering slowly over the air.
Yeah, they have lasers.
Yeah, like gauging stuff in the sky is like impossible by the naked eye. I know that. Because when I saw the meteor explode, I told my coworker, he's like, dude, where do you think it fell? Let's go look for the meteorite. Those are worth a lot of money. I'm like, dude, it was in the sky. Like it could have fallen into the Arboretum or it could have fallen into Montana. I don't know.
I'm gonna kill off the zooms for the Zoom folks. So thanks everybody for